2, 3, boom. Well, the G5n is this multi-effects / amp simulator from Zoom, and it's not bad. I got mine used over a year ago for like $250, and they're still retailing for $330, I think, which I find very surprising. And I'm not saying it's a bad product, but I have some issues with it I'll be talking about. First thing you might notice is that it's not just sitting by itself on the carpet. I've made my own little pedal board / enclosure for it, because I wasn't happy about how the inputs and everything was just on the top with everything just hanging out. It made me nervous, like it was going to get stepped on, so I wanted everything contained. So first thing I did is got a flat piece of wood. I sized it to be an exact fit for a road case that I have, so it just perfectly fits inside and it doesn't need any padding or anything. The Zoom itself is stuck on here with Velcro. I just kind of built it up piece by piece as I went along, kind of designed it on the fly. So I've got this hinged lid here. Underneath there's all the connections and a power supply, and I have a long power cable coming out. I put outputs on the side. You can see them right there. I'm just running through headphones right now. But anyway, this is cool, I think, because it protects it, and I don't have to keep winding and unwinding that tiny little wire for the power supply. I get nervous those are going to break. And it allows me to keep some stuff just plugged in all the time, so the setup is not as long. There's wooden little pillars here with little pads on top that are cushioning this lid. And then the original idea was I was going to have more pedals on top here. I was going to stick those on with Velcro. Due to the way the Zoom pedal works, I never made it to that point. I never figured out a way to make that work in a nice way that I liked. But what I did is put this wah pedal on here, and I actually modified it to put the output and the power on the front of it so that it wouldn't be sticking out the side right here, because I wanted it to fit really snug right next to it. And that worked out well. This is a nice wah. Oh my god, where was I? Yeah, so I made these outputs, custom made little patch cables, ran them from the two outputs over, just rerouted them over there basically. Get your headphone output here, and I've got this long extension cable in case I want to do some headphone jams and not be hunched over this thing because it's down on the floor, you know. Cable's not really long enough on most headphones to actually stand up, have them connected on the floor and move around at all. And then you got your USB. That's how I'm recording the guitar sounds right now. That's one of my favorite features of this, is just the fact that you can plug it into the computer and start recording, and it sounds exactly like it sounds on the unit. No messing with extra cables or extra interfaces. It's pretty great. Alright, I guess while I'm talking about it, I'll talk about my overall opinion of this thing, get that out of the way. Like I was saying, I think it's a good value for what it is. I've been frustrated with it, but I think a lot of that is due to my mindset not being in the right place to use a unit like this. I really don't have a lot of prior experience with multi-effects processors like this. So when I got it, I was basically trying to resume my pedal workflow just in a digital way with more effects and more versatility. And in a way, this works pretty well for that. But it has a limitation that is very important for that kind of thing, and I'll try to demonstrate that now. So I have this patch. I'm playing my bass right now. This is what it sounds like. The point is not what it sounds like, but how I wanted to work with this is to treat it like a pedal board. So I have 4 pedals here. I've got my tremolo. I've got an overdrive. I have a tape echo. And a hall reverb. But what if I need more effects? Well, then I have to scroll with this little button right here. And you can see I can get over to my reverb, my spring reverb, turn that off. So that is a problem. So the way it's laid out, here in the middle I have the Fender Deluxe Reverb, which takes up 2 slots by itself. And then after that I have the cabinet, Marshall 4x12, which takes up another slot. So in the current state of this display and these buttons, 3 out of the 4 switches are controlling my amp simulator. This one turns the amp off, which I would never ever want to do. This one turns the cabinet off, which I would never ever want to do. And then this one in the middle is a, well, I guess it's a tremolo switch. On some amps it's a solo boost, but the fact that that is there at all is very confusing, because that means in order to use that, I have to scroll over and be focused on the amp. So if I was scrolled over like that, I would have to be right there to use the tremolo, and then that would still leave me 2 pre-amp pedals to use. But then I have this switch right here that's accomplishing nothing, because it's basically just in the way. It's not doing anything that I want. It turns off my amp, which is the opposite of what I want. I got this thing because it sounds like an amp, not because it doesn't sound like an amp. So it's just silly to have that layout. And then, you know, usually you put your delays and your reverbs post gain. So it would be in the effects loop of the amp in a real world situation, or just after the amp at some point in a digital sort of situation. To do that here is ridiculous, because so you're playing rhythm and you've got your 4 pedals here that you're using, and you're going or something, right? And then it's time for your solo. So you kick on your overdrive, and then you scroll, and then you click on your delay, right? It doesn't make any sense to have it set up this way. You can't just wait 5 seconds to switch on your delay. And then when you turn off your delay, you have to hit it and then scroll back over and then turn off your overdrive. That's my main issue with this thing, is that there's no way to assign one button to turn on and off multiple effects, and there's no way to reorder the order in which they're laid out. It's left to right, first of all, which is kind of confusing, because in guitar pedal boards they go right to left, but whatever, that's not a big deal. But they just always go left to right, and you can't change the layout without changing the signal chain. So there's no way you can get your overdrive right next to your delay. You have to do this scrolling thing. So the solution to that, and this is probably the intended use of this unit, what I just described is probably not how they actually intended it to be used. You go into patch mode, and then you've just got different patches to switch between. And you could have your crunch tone, and then your lead tone, and then your lead tone with overdrive, or your crunch tone with chorus, or something like that. And then you can scroll through banks of patches, switch effects like that. That's fine, but that eats up a lot of time in editing and preparation. And then if you're on the gig and you've never used a patch before, and you flip it on and you realize it's not working, like the tone just isn't there, and you need to tweak it, well, congrats, now you have like 8 patches you have to tweak with that same tweak because you guessed wrong when you were setting it up. To me, that's not cool. And if you're gonna have it be usable in a Stompbox mode where you can turn effects on and off, it shouldn't be the case that they're locked in a set order. They should be flexible. You should be able to put the buttons wherever you want. You should be able to assign multiple effects to a button. Anyway, bottom line, you can't do that on this unit. So if you have the right mindset for using a multi-effects and you're gonna set it up with different patches that you just toggle between, then that's fine. This will be great because you get 4 at a time and it's really quick to scroll through them. It's not sluggish to scroll through them like it is with the pedals themselves. Like, look at this. That's as fast as it goes. Okay, so the other issue I had with this, using it for live use, is the lack of EQ. Sometimes you'll plug it in to a certain PA system in a certain room, and you'll realize that your tone doesn't have enough mids. Like maybe they have subwoofers going on at the venue, and you need more mid-range. Well, on this, it has a mid boost. This boost knob right here is like just a generic mid-range boost, and that works pretty well. And then this tone knob is like, I don't know, it's kind of confusing. It seems like if you leave it in the middle, that's a neutral setting. If you turn it this way, it gets rid of treble. But then if you turn it to the right, it adds treble and it subtracts bass. So there's no way, as far as I can tell, to add bass and add treble. I suppose if you were gonna do that, you would have to just take away mids and add volume. But I hope I'm not mistaken, I believe that the neutral setting for the output booster is to be all the way down. So if you wanted to have a 3-band EQ, you basically have to set all your patches up with the boost in the middle. Then you would need to, if you needed to add bass and treble, you would actually remove mids and add volume, which is confusing. Or you would need to, I don't even know. It's a mess. Why can't we just have low, mid, high volume? That would make a lot more sense. This is a nice idea, but without an actual master EQ in addition to this, it's really just confusing, and I tend to just leave it alone because I don't want to set up patches with it on and then have them not work well when it's off and just all this stuff. Funny enough, you would think that because this is like the flagship, like top of the line Zoom multi-effects, it would have all the best features, but they just released this year the G5n. Those ones, even though they're the cheapy ones that are less than $100, they actually have a master EQ that is universal and applied to every patch you go through. And I'll be doing a review of that unit also because I bought one of those too. So for the features, I want to say I think this has a lot of good features. It has a pretty intuitive editing system. I didn't read the manual when I first got it. I just jumped in and started going for it. And it works very well. You just hit the menu button and use this guy and then push it. It's a button as well. You can change the names of your patches. You can change the volume levels for your patches in case you accidentally make one too loud or too quiet. You can set up the settings pretty easily. There's tuner settings, which is nice. You can have it not mute, or you can have it bypass your effects, or you can have it mute. You can set it to different frequencies. You can change the type, like if you want to set it to guitar mode or whatever, and then that helps you do like drop tunings. You got USB settings, so you can change the balance between your computer sound and your guitar sound, which is nice. And then the recording gain is just the level of the signal that you're sending to the computer. You can give it a little bit of headroom. I've never changed that because I've never seen it clip before. It's been totally fine at -6. You can turn on the external pedal. There is an expression pedal input on this guy, and if you enable this option, then you're going to be able to insert 2 different pedal effects into your chain, one with the built-in and one with the external. Pre-select is like normally when you're on this patch selection and then you scroll to another bank, it'll just jump onto like the 3rd slot on that bank if you have the 3rd slot selected. But if you have pre-select on, then it will wait for you to actually stomp on a preset before it will switch. So that's a must. I don't understand why it would be designed differently than that. You got autosave, which is nice, so you can just quickly edit things and you don't have to worry about saving them manually. Although that can get you in trouble if you start tweaking stuff and then before you know it, your patch is ruined. Eco mode, it just turns the unit off after 10 hours of inactivity, which is a long ass time. It seems like it should be 1 hour or less. I really like the expression pedal. I've actually put some masking tape under here to make the button easier to press because it was a little difficult to press at first, and now you can see very easy but very hard to do accidentally, so I found a good balance there. It only has one mono input, which I was a little disappointed about. I've wished at some points that I could hook something up stereo and run it through here and then come out stereo and go into something else, but it's really not a big issue, and it's pretty esoteric desire, I think. And it's got an aux input right here, 1/8 inch stereo aux input, so you can listen to stuff on your phone or computer or whatever. You got your 2 outputs, 1/4 inch headphone output, 1/8 inch external pedal, expression pedal. You got your USB power switch and your power adapter. You might notice there's a big empty space right here, about the size of 2 XLR jacks. yeah, I don't know what the deal is, why those are not there. They really should have XLR out on this thing. Ideally, it would be XLR out with the cabinet simulator and then 1/4 inch out without it, so you could run into a real amp. But alas, this thing does not have XLR. So that is another reason I built this enclosure, so I could just shove a DI in here and get an XLR out if I need one. The tuner works really well, even for bass. I've tuned down to C sharp, no problem. It tracks it great. Looks like it goes down to C. I guess it would. Oh, having some trouble at B. Yeah, it works though. You could tune a 5-string bass on this, no problem. I'm not gonna really go into reviewing the sounds. Plenty of other videos on YouTube that do that, but I haven't seen anyone talking about what it's like to actually own one of these things and try to gig with it. So if you want to hear some sick presets, go check out a channel called Direct Recording Guitar. That guy has posted some amazing recreations of tones from famous songs and stuff. It's pretty great. Needless to say, this thing can sound pretty much however you want it to. It's a very high quality simulation of a whole bunch of different amps and effects. So if that's all you're looking for, especially just for studio use, this thing is great. Don't even worry about it. So you may have noticed that I'm playing a bass through it right now. Zoom does have a version of this called well, they don't have a version of the 5, but they have the smaller model, the 3. They have a B3 for bass, and I've never used the B3, but I have used the new B14, which is based on the same exact effects and software. And I gotta say, I was not impressed with the bass version. It didn't really have much to offer that the guitar version doesn't. What it does have is a couple of like auto filter style effects, envelope filters, that kind of thing. But the guitar version has those too. The bass version just had more selection of them, more variety, and way more compressors. Although I didn't find the compressors to be really any better, because they're still limited in how many parameters they have. Generally, the effects on this guy only have up to 4 parameters. That's something I want to talk about too. On each of these effects slots, you can have one pedal. You see on this top screen, I have my volume pedal, tremolo, drive, echo, hall reverb, and then a Fender Deluxe reverb, which takes up 2 slots. And I can't figure out why it takes up 2 slots, except for the fact that it has an on-off toggle switch, which I've already said is useless. And then it has the amp-dependent control switch, so this one, it's the tremolo. I can't figure out why they wouldn't just make it one switch and have that be the tremolo switch, and then have the on-off for the amp just be a control, and they could have multiple pages of controls. On the older Zooms, they had multiple pages for the effects, and on the new G5n, they have pages. So like the first 3 will be parameters, and then the last knob will be pages, and it'll have 3 pages for an amp. So it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It'll have 8 parameters spread across 3 pages. And I don't understand why they wouldn't do that here. Maybe they just didn't think that that was a good idea at the time. But now that they've done it on their small pedals, I don't understand why they're not releasing an update for the firmware for this guy to give it that feature. Because for me, that would be like my most requested feature, is stop doubling up on slots for some of these effects. Like, so if I insert an EQ, the EQ takes up 2 slots. It has an on-off toggle and then it has channel A, channel B toggle. I don't know what kind of crazy EQers are using 2 channels on their EQ. I guess it would be useful for certain things, but I don't want it taking up 2 slots, especially because you have to scroll back and forth to access things. Presumably the EQ would be well, in some cases it would be before the amp. The way I'm thinking of it is you would use the EQ before the amp for a boost or something, because it affects the way it interacts with the distortion. And then you might want an EQ after the amp to just do some tone shaping. But if you set that up, I'll just demonstrate. So we got a Marshall, and then we got a cabinet. And then we'll do another EQ. Where is it? Okay, so now just for the basic amount of tone shaping, pre-EQ, into the amp, into the cabinet, into the post EQ. Oh shit, we only have 2 slots left, right? Yeah, so now good luck using any effects with this patch, because you wasted all your effect slots on your amp and your 2 EQs, which all take up 2 slots, which makes no sense to me, because those are some of, like, the EQs are some of the least intense processing power effects. They should only take up 1 slot. But the way they've designed this is that just because they have more controls, they take up 2 slots. But that actually limits how many effects you can have in your chain. You cannot go past the bounds of this screen. What you see is what you get. You can't, there's no scrolling left and scrolling right. You can't add more effects until you run out of processing power. You're physically restricted to what's left over after you've put these bare essentials in here. So to me, that is just crazy. I don't understand that design philosophy at all. You should be able to insert an effect in your chain and have it not even show up on the board. You should have you should be able to have a hidden effect that is just always on, because maybe that's the fundamental thing in your patch. And you still need to be able to access the other stuff, or just, you know, God forbid, add more things. But yeah, so that is probably the most egregious thing about this, that I can't understand why they designed it this way. I guess I'll go over how to edit. You've seen me do a little bit of this already. You scroll back and forth with these switches here, and you use these buttons to scroll through the effects. It's really slow to go through everything if you just do it with the one button. But if you hold one button and press the other, it goes through categories. So it's reasonably quick to get through everything if you start memorizing where everything is, what order they're in. I was always a little confused though, like what order I'm going. I still haven't really wrapped my head around the logical order. So you hold this and you press that. It goes rhythm, it goes pedal, reverb, delay, sound effects, modulation, cabinet, amp. I guess this is the order that they would be in your chain, but it's not really. I don't know. It just seems arbitrary to me. Cabinet, drive, it goes drive, amp, cabinet. That makes sense to me, but all the rest seem to be just in random places. Yeah, there's that super useful bomber sound effect. I just want to complain about the user interface a little more. You can see the speed at which you scroll through here. That's reasonably quick. But if I go back over to my patch I was on, why is it scrolling so slowly through this one? I don't understand that. I actually thought my whole unit was slowing down until I started making this video and I realized the other patches go faster. Like, look at that. That is crazy. So like the problem about switching effects is even more magnified on a slow patch like this, which I don't understand why it's so slow. Maybe because I'm very close to the limit of processing power. Maybe it's allocating it to the audio rather than the visuals, which I appreciate, but still, it shouldn't ever slow down like this. That's kind of ridiculous. What else? It's probably really late to be saying this, but the build quality is excellent. This is all solid aluminum on the sides too, and the bottom. There's big rubber feet on the bottom, and the pedal is very sturdy. So for a while I was torn between keeping this thing and trying to use it for everything. I play guitar and bass in some local bands. So I wanted one pedal board that could handle everything, and a multi-effects with digital editing, you know, just seemed to be ideal for that, so I don't have to swap pedals out ever, and I don't have to have different settings for different instruments. I could just have my setup, click it onto guitar mode, click it onto bass mode, whatever. But this thing has some problems, as I've explained, hopefully adequately. And it's not all its fault. Some of it is me just not using it correctly, like I talked about, the patches. That's the way to use it. You need to set up different patches and just be happy with them and switch between them. You don't want to be going into the pedal mode and trying to futz around with trying to scroll around, and you know, this just gets ridiculous. And then also, like, if you have autosave turned on, when you click a pedal on, it says edited, and then after a couple seconds saved. So then if you go and switch patches, next time you come back, that effect's going to be on. So that can get complicated and messy if you're not careful. So I would recommend avoiding using it that way. Just use it with the patches like this. But one thing that I was really hoping I could do, which is one of the reasons I built this board, this enclosure for it, I wanted to have more pedals up here that I can incorporate. But I just could not figure out a way to do that would be adequate. One of the things that I like about this thing is that it's good for practicing and recording. So the fact that it has a built-in headphone output is huge for me. It's super nice to be able to just plug this in, plug in my guitar, and start rocking out. If I started using external pedals as part of my core sound, there's no way for me to do that unless they were all going in to the input, because otherwise they're coming out through the pedals post output on the Zoom, so the headphone output is not going to really reflect my true sound. Like if I wanted to put a cool delay pedal on or something. I've seen other multi-effects that have an actual effects loop output, which is super nice. Like the Fender Mustang Floor has one of those. It's a lot less flexible than this in terms of editing, but it's got that, and to me that's huge to have an effects loop. I didn't know it at the time that I bought this, but now I think that is like a must-have, because you're never going to be 100% satisfied with every single thing about your multi-effects. So the fact that you could patch it into something else in the middle of your chain and bring it back is huge, and this cannot do that. And that is one of the big reasons why I'm trying to get rid of this. I really like it. I like working with it. I like the sound. I like recording with it. But I'm not able to figure out a good way to use it live that I'm 100% happy with. Either it's not flexible enough, or it's just too much trouble to get it to behave the way I want. I got derailed earlier when I was starting to talk about this. You can play guitar through this. You can play bass through this. You can actually sing through this. I've hooked up a mic to the input with a XLR to 1/4 inch, and I set up a effects chain with just vocal stuff, and it worked fantastic. So I just wanted to throw that in there. If you're a multi-instrumentalist or a recording artist who uses multiple instruments, like, yes, you can totally do everything through this. Obviously there's no phantom power because it's a 1/4 inch input, but if you're using a dynamic mic or you have another preamp that you're going through, this thing's great. You can run everything through this. And it's got enough variety of effects. It's not totally about guitar. You just basically ignore the amp stuff, and you've got just a host of nice effects for any purpose. Well, I guess I should mention the computer editing software that you can download from Zoom. It's called Guitar Lab, and it lets you edit all your patches. It lets you rename them more easily, and I think you can back them up to your computer, and you can share them online, I believe. I have edited some patches on the computer before, and it does make it a heck of a lot easier. So I would recommend checking that out if you own a Zoom pedal. It seems like most, if not all, multi-effects pedals nowadays have an on the computer editing suite available, so that's not really a huge selling point. But it is very nice to have. bottom line, do I recommend it? Yeah, I do. As long as you understand what you're getting into. If you've never had a multi-effects before and you're just coming from analog pedals, I hope this video has been enlightening for you in the struggle and the differences you're gonna encounter between the two workflows. It is a different way to go, and this particular unit doesn't have the capability to sort of do a half and half kind of approach. It's really just all this, you know. You can front load it with any pedals you want. Like I've got my wah, which I really love. Not that there's anything wrong with the built-in wahs, they're actually very nice sounding, but I just always want a wah available. I don't want to have to mess around with adding one to the patch. And the fact that it takes up a slot in my patch just for a wah pedal that I always want, that basically means that every patch has one fewer possible effect available, so I didn't want that. Plus I can use this as a volume pedal, which is super nice because it's totally digital. It's perfect, you know. There's no scratchy pots or anything. It's great. Anyway, what was I saying? Do I recommend it? Yeah, I do. It's very good, especially if you can find it at less than full price like I did. I would probably be a little more annoyed with it if I'd paid more. I definitely think it's worth the money with everything it does, especially if you're not playing live. If you just want it for jamming and recording, it's great. Like, I can't recommend it enough. It's fantastic for that kind of stuff. I have personally just not been able to make it work live. I've played it on like 5 gigs, and every time I just go, nah, it's just not quite there. It's a little clumsy to use. But that's not to say it couldn't be used live in a good way. It just personally wasn't working for me, and I hope I can find something that does, because I really prefer digital effects over real pedals. I think real pedals are, they're cool, but man, they're really expensive and a lot of trouble. And if you can just find something digital that works for you, then that's the best thing to do. Okay, I guess I'm done. Bye. If you liked this video, if you like my voice, if you learned anything, if you're interested in this kind of content, if you want to see my next Zoom pedal review or other guitar gear reviews that I'm going to be doing, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm just getting started, and it would really mean a lot to me. I want to start doing this every day if I can. I think I bring a unique perspective, and I'm willing to explain things in ways that other channels probably aren't. And I'm willing to review gear that's not just the new shit, you know? I want to talk about what my experiences have been. So anyway, please consider joining me on this channel if you want. I guess give it a like, whatever. The whole YouTube thing. Yeah, thank you. I'll see you on the next one.